Let's get into it here with sleepers slash late round targets. The average draft position, aka ADP, we are using for this exercise is from an aggregate of Yahoo, Sleeper, and ESPN. We're only looking at guys with an ADP of 120 or later. You can find that ADP in our half PPR rankings. So the way Evan and I did this is we both kind of submitted some guys to each other that we like as late round picks this year. A little bit surprised to me, only one of them was a guy that both of us had on our list, and that is Chase Brown. I talked for about 6 or 7 minutes about Chase Brown on Market Monday this week, so I will give Evan the floor here to give his take on Chase Brown versus Zach Moss, and his outlook this year.
Yeah, so I think that Chase Brown, the way that people talk about him, they're very interested in talking about how he only played one third down snap last year, how he was used as a clear cut change of pace back behind Joe Mixon. They didn't trust him in pass protection. Obviously, that is often the case with rookie running backs, and they did trust Joe Mixon in pass protection. Joe Mixon is now gone. Chase Brown is a really good football player, and he also has a workhorse background. He's also not that small. He's 209 pounds. In his final season in Illinois, he averaged 29.6 touches per game. He can catch the football out of the backfield. He had games where he had 40 carries in a game at Illinois. So he has a workhorse back track record, and he's way more explosive than Zach Moss, who had a nice season, filling in for Jonathan Taylor last year in Indianapolis, but way more, ran 4.43 at 209, 10'7" broad jump, 40-inch vertical. Those are very explosive numbers, and we saw that on the field. He had, I think, the fastest time.
Yes.
As a ball carrier of any player in the NFL on an 80-yard, I think it was a screen. But they were using him on screens, and I think that his upside is so much. I think Zach Moss has this steady floor, and I think that Zach Moss is going to open the season leading the team in carries. But it wouldn't surprise me if, in a very productive offense, Chase Brown overtakes him week 4, week 5, something like that. I think that his ADP right now at 120 is far too low, and I'm glad that we're in lockstep on this one.
Yeah, ADP right now in home leagues is 123 on Chase Brown. I'll say a few things. First, to Evan's point, Chase Brown and Zach Moss are almost the same size. That's not the issue. It's the issue on Chase Brown, and I think Chase Brown can catch the football too. The issue has exclusively been in pass protection. They used Travion Williams there a lot last season over Chase Brown. So the pass protection thing is an issue, but catching the ball on early downs is certainly in the range of outcomes for Chase Brown. The other thing I would say is that guys can get better. Guys can get better at everything. Sometimes we're like, this is the way the guy is. This is how he's going to be forever. Chase Brown can certainly get better. I would agree that this upside case on Chase Brown is higher. We have recently made some tweaks on our ETR top 300s to get Chase Brown even higher. Evan's top 150, he has Chase Brown actually ahead of Zach Moss. Chase Brown 91st, Zach Moss 93rd. So yeah, I mean, these are the kind of plays that I like to make. For more of my take on Chase Brown, you can listen to Market Monday. Let's go to second sleeper here, and this is one of mine. So Jerry Jeudy at ADP of 147, and then also Deshaun Watson at ADP of 158, both on the Browns. So I know everybody thinks Jerry Jeudy sucks. The underlying stats between Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy last season were not all that different. Courtland Sutton just happened to sun run on touchdowns. I get it. Jerry Jeudy's not that good. Steve Smith hates Jerry Jeudy. He's still a 25-year-old wide receiver who went 15th overall in the 2020 draft. The analytically minded Browns trade for Jerry Jeudy and give him a contract extension totaling $50 million. Browns are also changing their offense. We've talked about this a bunch, to go more spread without Nick Chubb. They're going to play super fast. And from a quarterback perspective, Jerry Jeudy has only played with the corpse of Russ Wilson, Brett Rippon, Teddy Bridgewater, and Drew Lock. And all that brings me to Deshaun Watson. All the off-field stuff, speculation doesn't want to play football anymore. I don't know. The big thing for me that I'm worried about is his shoulder. All the other stuff is just noise. If Deshaun Watson's shoulder is right, at 158 overall, we're getting a mobile quarterback. I mean, last year, Deshaun Watson went 26, 142, 1 rushing on 383 snaps, 6 games worth. So we're getting a mobile quarterback with Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, Elijah Moore, Jerome Ford's a good receiver. So Judy and Watson, I am interested in. Obviously, it's correlated, both of them. If Deshaun Watson plays well, I think Jerry Judy will play well also. But yeah, I just think a change of scenery play here on Jerry Judy as he falls all the way down to 147. Evan, any thoughts on that one for me, Jerry Judy and or
Well, I just
Deshaun
start by
Watson?
saying I think that the Browns are kind of an interesting offense to stack. We know that they are going to run a lot of plays. I mean, they ran the most plays in the NFL last year, and like Ken Dorsey's out here and Kevin Stefanski are out here talking about how they want to increase the tempo from last season, and none of the guys are particularly exorbitant in terms of price. So, kind of a sneaky stack team, and at fairly reasonable cost. In terms of Jerry Judy, so he as you mentioned, he's 25 years old. The Browns, who are a pretty smart organization under Andrew Berry, with some few exceptions, which are usually driven by the owner and not Andrew
Mm-hmm.
Berry, they believe in Jerry Judy. I mean, they gave up 2 draft picks for him. They signed him to a 3-year, $52.5 million extension with $41 million guaranteed. In his career, he's averaged 14 and a half yards per reception, which is a pretty explosive number. He can play inside and outside. He's going to be locked into the number 2 receiver role across from Amari Cooper. The way that I characterized him in my team preview was as a wide receiver 4 pick with wide receiver 2 upside. And really, at this ADP that he's at right now, you could draft him as like a wide receiver 5 or 6. I mean, he's barely inside the top 150. I really like this call. I didn't pick him out as one of my sleepers, but I looked at him. I thought about picking him out as a sleeper because his ADP is way too low. And if something does happen with Deshaun Watson's shoulder, like we got Jameis Winston jumping in
Yep.
there, and that'd be a lot of fun. And I don't think that there would be necessarily any drop off from Jameis Winston. It's very clear that the Browns want to throw the ball this season. They're not going to have Nick Chubb for probably the first half of the year. They're not going to be able to have their offense revolve around a workhorse running back. They're going to play a lot of spread. That's going to benefit Jerry Judy. He's going to be on the field a ton.
Yeah. Again, ADP on Jerry Judy right now is 147. Evan has him 118 in his top 150. All right. Let's go to one of Evan's here. It is Green Bay Packers wide receiver Dontavian Wicks. ADP on Dontavian Wicks is 164. Evan has Dontavian Wicks all the way up at 95. So, Evan, go ahead on Dontavian Wicks as a sleeper target this year.
So I think there's a real possibility that Dontavian Wicks is the best receiver on the Packers. And look, they have an embarrassment of young receiver riches right now. They've got Christian Watson, who might have the highest ceiling of the group. Romeo Dobbs apparently is having a great camp. Jair Alexander was talking him up as maybe the best receiver on the team. Jaden Reed had scored 10 touchdowns as a rookie, and has been an explosive player as a slot and sort of gadget player. Dontavian Wicks, when he started to come on last season, Matt LaFleur openly compared him to Devontae Adams, which is saying a lot. He was a guy that was considered a big time potential future first round pick entering his final season in college, and did not have a great final season in college. And I think he wound up going in the 4th round. But I mean, he looked like an early day 2, maybe even late first round pick type player when he was on the field last season. Averaged almost 2 yards per route run. I don't know, I'm kind of buying the coach speak on him to an extent, and he's been making plays in training camp so far. There is an issue here, and that is the possibility that the Packers, and they also have Bo Melton, who's a really good athlete in his own right, and they have 2 tight ends that they can play, assuming that Tucker Kraft is ready, that they open the season with a bunch of rotations. They're playing 5 receivers. Like all the guys are getting playing time. There's not necessarily a clear 3 receiver set. They're mixing in these 2 tight end packages in which, there's only 1 or 2 receivers on the field. That is a concern for me early in the season. But as the season progresses, what typically happens with teams like that is they wind up narrowing. Guys will get hurt, or, the coaches are like, all right, this guy deserves more playing time now. And they'll narrow down the snap distribution at those skill positions. I think that's probably what will happen. This is another offense that you can stack pretty affordably. I mean, who's the most expensive Packers receiver right now? Watson or
Yeah, Jaden Reed is
Jaden
by a
Reed
decent
is?
amount.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Watson goes what in the middle rounds? Dontavian Wicks, we've got him what at 160 in ADP or one
Oh
sixty
yeah. I
four.
mean, yeah, home league ADP, he goes real
You
late for
got
sure.
Josh Jacobs, who I don't know, I drafted in the third round in an FFPC best ball the other day. And Jordan Loves goes what like seventh round, sixth or seventh round.
Yeah.
Marshawn Lloyd is an intriguing late round pick, although he's been banged up in training camp off to a slow start. And then the two tight ends. I think Luke Musgrave has big time breaking potential. I think we're going to talk about him.
Yep.
Um, but they have a lot of dudes. They're going to be productive on offense. It's just that threat that early in the season they're using big rotations at the skill positions might hurt them early on.
So the reason Dontavian Wicks ADP is 164 is because it's really hard to give him a lot of volume, right? Because who are you taking it from? I want to be high on Jaden Reed. I Christian Watson scares me a little bit. I think that could be the rotation between Watson and Wicks, but they love Romeo Dobbs. I mean, they love having Romeo Dobbs out there. I'm not saying Romeo Dobbs is their best receiver. In fact, he might be their worst receiver, but they love having him out there. And then you have the two tight ends, like you mentioned. So, and then you need Jordan Love to maintain his efficiency. So, I'm okay with Wicks. I'm not going to say bad things about Wicks at 164. I have a hard time with him when he starts going in like the 120s, the 110s, like he has in best ball. In home leagues, though, Wicks is going to be way cheaper, absolutely
Yeah,
free. And I mean, like my bets on wide receiver talent breaking through try to be where I don't like the talent above him. I kind of like Watson and Reed and even Dobbs to some extent. So I haven't taken as much Wicks, but I totally get it. I think if he had less competition in front of him, he'd be an absolute smash for sure. But then again, he also wouldn't be this cheap. All right. Go to one of mine here for our fourth sleeper. I'm going to go with Zach Charbonnet, who has an ADP of 134. Now, I actually like Kenneth Walker, but I can see why NFL coaches may not like Kenneth Walker. A lot of NFL coaches are like, hey, just go out there and get what's blocked. Don't take negative runs. Just get the 4 yards, keep us in front of the sticks. But with the Seahawks changing regimes away from Boomtown Pete Carroll to a more modern Ryan Grubb, there's some chance, just the instability of it. I wonder if we'll see the Walker Charbonnet stuff closer on early downs. We already know that Charbonnet should have the passing down stuff on lock. Now, I don't think Charbonnet is like some super mega talent great back, but he's good. And we also get big time contingent value. If Walker goes down, Zach Charbonnet can handle big workloads. Last year he had touch counts of 20, 18, and 21 in 3 starts. Also averaged 18.9 and 23.2 touches per game in his final 2 seasons at UCLA. And kind of most importantly for me on Charbonnet, just the archetype of the kind of back that I like to grab late. Has some standalone value, even if maybe that's limited, but maybe it could be bigger. And then major contingent value. So I think this Charbonnet play is similar to one that Evan submitted that we'll talk about next. But yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Charbonnet and the Walker Charbonnet split this season?
I'm a Kenneth Walker guy, and I think that explosive big playability, and I know he can be boomer bust for sure, but that explosive big playability is going to get him on the field ahead of Charbonnet fairly comfortably. Charbonnet more of a get what's blocked type of back. Big concerns about the Seattle offensive line. We mentioned it on the show
Yeah.
with Brandon Thorne, went in depth, especially on the interior, and that's where Zach Charbonnet kind of lives. So I at 134, I'm not going to kill it at all. I
Yeah.
mean,
Evan has Charbonnet at 129 in his top
there
150
you
right
go.
now.
I'm,
So
I'm even ahead of ADP on him.
right in line pretty much with ADP. And Evan has Kenneth Walker at 61
Yeah.
overall.
So I'm just betting on the talent of Kenneth Walker. Um, I don't know what to think of the new regime. Down on the interior offensive line, maybe even down on the tackles. Abe Lucas did
Yeah.
not play well when he was healthy last year, and neither did Charles Cross. So, and I think that Zach Charbonnet is a little bit more of like an offensive line dependent type of player. So that's where my level of skepticism comes. But again, I'm 5 spots ahead of ADP on him, and he has upside if something happens to Kenneth Walker for sure.
All right, let's talk about, I teased it, a similar running back, I think, but one that goes about a round later. Ty Chandler is one that Evan submitted here at 153 overall. We saw the Vikings show plenty of faith in Ty Chandler last season, but then they go out and sign Aaron Jones, which is tanked the ADP of Ty Chandler. So, Evan, go ahead on Mr. Chandler.
Well, Aaron Jones, has a fairly lengthy injury history. I don't think that he's a good bet to hold up as any kind of a workhorse running back. I think that he's a running back that you want to use in a tandem, certainly as the 1A. Aaron Jones is one of the running backs in the NFL that can move the needle because he can be that good in both the run and the passing games. But I think that he's a guy that you don't want to. I think you want to keep him around 15 to 18 touches per game, as opposed to having him up like 24 or something like that. So that leaves open a role for Ty Chandler, and the Vikings did nothing in the backfield this offseason besides get rid of Alexander Madison and bring in Aaron Jones. So I think that Ty Chandler is locked into the number 2 role on a team that I think can score points. And we're going to talk about another deep sleeper for the Vikings that people will probably laugh at later. But I think that under Kevin O'Connell, the scheme is so strong. They've got a good offensive line. They've got big time weaponry. They play indoors. Ty Chandler can run like the wind. I think that he can be a little bit of a factor as long as Aaron Jones stays healthy. And then if something happens to Aaron Jones, all of a sudden Ty Chandler is like an every week fantasy starter.
The reason the Packers dumped Aaron Jones is because he couldn't stay healthy, period. I mean, not only missing games, but just like getting nicked in games and not being able to be at full strength during games. So, yeah, I definitely think Ty Chandler's going to have a big role. The coach speak this offseason has been strong on Ty Chandler. Like, they are not backing off, wanting to use Ty Chandler a lot. I would agree with Evan that there's probably a bit more standalone value on Ty Chandler than there is on Zach Charbonnet, and he goes around later, like I said, 153 overall. All right. Let's get to one of mine, a receiver here. It is Rashid Shaheed. His ADP in home leagues 152 overall right now. That is a big difference from the Shaheed hype because the Shaheed hype in fantasy virgin circles, hardcore best ball stuff, I mean, his ADP is 104. Now, at 104, I don't think Shaheed is the greatest fit with Derek Carr. He doesn't really replace what Michael Thomas used to do. 104 is tougher for me, but here at 152, I'm just buying on explosive talent. There are very few wide receivers in the game better at getting deep and converting air yards to production than Rashid Shaheed is. I just want to be clear that the weekly floor is going to be low. He had an ADOT of 14.6 yards last season, 13th highest in the NFL. That just creates a lot of volatility and only 5 targets per game for Rashid Shaheed. I'm not sure I can give him more than that this year. But at 152 overall, Rashid Shaheed is going to have some really big games, and that's the kind of players that I want to have on my roster. Evan, I know that a lot of stuff out of Saints camp has not been pretty between the Ryan Ramczyk thing, the Kendra Miller thing, but any thoughts on Rashid Shaheed this season?
Well, I think 152 is ridiculous ADP for him. He should certainly be higher than that. I think that around 100 makes more sense.
Yeah, Evan's at 106, by the way, on Rashid
Perfect.
Shaheed.
I like that. So Clint Kubiak comes from the Shanahan Kubiak tree. And those guys have been really good at manufacturing touches for like creating run after catch opportunities is probably the best way to put it. So I think that ADOT comes down for Rashid Shaheed, and he certainly still is used to take the top off the defense, but they're going to bring that down, and he can be really good with the ball in his hands, and that is evidenced by the fact that he's been one of the best return men in the NFL since he entered the NFL. So if he can just get a handful more of layup routes, and he's certainly going to get deep targets, he's going to get air yards, and he's certainly going to be on the field much more. I mean, they are low on playmakers in New Orleans. They need Rashid Shaheed to have a nice season. There's no way he's going to fail at an ADP of 150 or anything from 125 on. He's an absolute steal right now at that ADP.
Right. And if you guys read my draft strategy article, like this kind of stuff is the reason why I talked about running backs in round 1 or round 2 in home league type stuff, because you're going to get wide receivers who fall through the cracks. Some of the guys we're talking about today, and certainly Rashid Shaheed qualifies at 152 overall. Let's go to a tight end from Evan's list. We already spent a bit of time talking about the Packers, but Evan submitted Luke Musgrave, who has an ADP of 164. Just want to be clear that there was some positive news on Tucker Kraft's pectoral injury here in the last couple days. Sounds like he's going to certainly make it back ahead of week one. Will Tucker Kraft, but Evan, go ahead on Luke Musgrave.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Musgrave didn't tear the cover off or anything as a rookie. That's par for the course for rookie tight ends. Um, but he got better as the season progressed, and this was a 42nd pick, 42nd overall pick in the draft in 2023. The Packers have done a pretty good job of drafting. I think he's probably going to end up being a hit, and these tight ends tend to break out in year two. We talk about stacking the Packers, how it's very affordable. Well, Luke Musgrave, I think, should be a part of any Packers stack, especially at this ADP of 164. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, this guy's a really talented player with a really talented quarterback and an offense that is going to score points. Another steal at his current ADP.
Yeah, I was taking a bunch of Luke Musgrave on the Tucker Kraft injury stuff initially. Luke Musgrave's since gotten pretty expensive in the best ball stuff into the 140s or so. The reason that all these Packers guys are going to go late is just rotations and people worried about target shares because, God, there's a lot of mouths to feed for sure. But if somebody breaks out, if Luke Musgrave dominates snaps over Tucker Kraft and plays every snap, I agree. This is going to be a smash. I'll get to my favorite late round tight end here in a bit. Let's get back to the wide receiver for one of mine here. Josh Palmer's ADP is 159. Now, I certainly prefer Ladd McConkey, but Ladd McConkey's ADP is 101. That gap to me is way too wide. McConkey 101, Palmer 159 ADP. I'm just so confident that Josh Palmer is going to be on the field every snap for this Chargers team. The 3 wide receiver set through the first 6 days of camp has been Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey, DJ Chark. When they go to 2 wide receiver sets, I think Josh Palmer will be the one to stay on the field, and maybe we get a bit of a rotation at the other spot unless McConkey blows the doors off, which is certainly possible. But anyway, that's a great role for Josh Palmer, who could certainly lead this Chargers team in targets from Justin Herbert. And no matter what you think about Harbaugh and Roman and this offense and how boomerish they are, like their pass rate's not going to get below 57, 58%, I don't think. Not with Justin Herbert. And I think efficiency can be there. We have a quarterback as good as Herbert also, and the threat of this run game so much. So I don't think Josh Palmer is going to go nuts. He's not going to go for 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, but his ADP is also 159 overall and just a solid play from a week-to-week basis. I think Josh Palmer will be. Have any thoughts on Palmer McConkey battles, etc.?
Yeah, Josh Palmer is entering the final year of his rookie deal, his contract year, of course, and he's played 3 seasons in the NFL. And he's only he won't even be 25 until late September. So I think that the needle can definitely be pointing up on Josh Palmer. He's coming off a career high 9.5 yards per reception. I'm sorry, yards per target. I agree with you that he's going to be locked into 2 receiver sets. I think that he could out target Ladd McConkey. I mean, I think that that's not crazy at all. Ladd McConkey has a lot of intriguing characteristics, but it was never like a big time producer or anything in college. And Josh Palmer has, he's the veteran of this group. I know DJ Chark has been in the league a little bit longer, but DJ Chark is, a replacement level wind sprint runner. And then Quentin Johnston has been a disaster in training camp. I don't even know if he's going to be like the 4th receiver at this point. So I'm totally with you on Josh Palmer. I think this is a good call. I don't think that he's going to be a difference maker in fantasy, but I do think he's someone who could, beat up his ADP pretty good.
Right. Evan has him at 105 overall. But yeah, in redraft, I'm like more likely to take swings on guys who I think can absolutely break fantasy. Obviously, though, when you get to 159 overall where Palmer goes, though, you don't have to take as huge swings. Can get solid production there. All right. Let's go to another wide receiver in this range. Evan submitted Jahan Dotson, shout out Penn State, who has an ADP of 160 overall in home leagues right now. Vibes on Jaden Daniels in camp so far have been good, like legit good. Evan, thoughts on Jahan Dotson here this season?
So Jahan Dotson had a lot of hype entering last season, and that offense was just an absolute train wreck. I mean, there was really no rhyme or reason to anything that Eric Bieniemy was doing. They weren't helping Sam Howell. Sam Howell was, a problem in and of itself. But I mean, there's a reason that Eric Bieniemy. I mean, I don't even think he's in the NFL anymore.
Yeah.
Um, that was an absolute disaster. And so, I mean, this is a player that was a first round pick not too long ago, and I think that it's a good opportunity to buy back on him because he was a guy that a lot of people were excited about entering last season, myself included. I've never been a huge Jahan Dotson guy, but I think that now is the time to buy. You buy the dip. He's not even a top 150 overall player right now in
Yeah.
terms of ADP, and I think he definitely should be. He's got enough talent. He's also a guy that Matt Harmon has kind of like, and Matt Harmon sometimes will be a year or two early on guys. He has liked Jahan Dotson's route running profile. So that's another, kind of feather in the cap of Jahan Dotson at ADP of 160. 160.
Yeah. Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator for the UCLA Bruins this season.
There you go.
So good luck to Eric Bieniemy there at UCLA. Yeah, I think the gap between Terry McLaurin's ADP and Jahan Dotson's ADP is way too wide. And I want to make bets on Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be good in real life and very good in fantasy. So I like it. I'm worried about the Cliff stuff, Kingsbury stuff a little bit. I know Evan isn't as much. You can listen to the Coaching Change pod for more on that. But yeah, I certainly am totally fine with Jahan Dotson here at 160 overall.
Another thing to note on him is that, I mean, he like has no competition really for that number 2 receiver role. I mean, Luke
Yeah.
McCaffrey is interesting. I get it, but he's a third round rookie. Byron Pringle, De'Ami Brown, Olamide, Zacchaeus, like it's McLaurin and Dotson in 2 receiver sets, and you can hang your hat on that.
All right. Let's go to the number 10 sleeper here on the list. And this one is a layup for me. It is Noah Fant, who has an ADP of 177 overall. Price has started to rise in some sharper leagues, but yeah, 177, still the ADP in home leagues. I have like 44% Noah Fant through about 50 or so best ball drafts and feel pretty good about that, especially considering most of it was round 17 through 20. Now, in redraft, hopefully you read that strategy article I was talking about, but I talked about how strong I thought the top 8 tight ends or so was relative to other years for sure. And so relative to other years, I'm trying to get one of those very strongly in redraft. But if you're in tight end premium or something deeper, to me, Fant is the no-brainer late round target. I actually prefer him to Luke Musgrave, who Evan talked about. Seahawks get rid of Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly. They replace those guys with like an aging blocker type in Pharaoh Brown. You get the new Ryan Grubb scheme as well. And I mean, Fant is a freak athlete. I mean, there's a reason he went in the first round of the NFL draft. And we've seen late career breakouts from really good athletes at the tight end position before. Doesn't even need to break out, though, at 177 overall in ADP. He can just be solid there, and it's fine. But yeah, Evan, sounds like you might prefer Musgrave to Fant. Any more thoughts on Noah Fant?
I think that the case is interesting. 44%. I mean, you might need to go touch some grass there, Adam. You know, Noah Fant at like on half your rosters. Um, he's been a disappointment, I think, in the NFL, but he's
Yeah.
always played in rotations. And you can definitely envision a scenario this year because Will Dissly's gone, because Colby Parkinson's gone, where all of a sudden Noah Fant is hitting like a career high in snap count. You're right, he's a good athlete. He's only 26 years old. It seems like he's been around forever. Doesn't turn 27 until late November. It's that lack of historical production that has me shying away. But I like your later career breakout tight end theory because that's definitely happened. Something that happens fairly commonly in
Yeah.
the NFL, especially for guys that are good athletes. And we've seen that happen with David Njoku. You
Yeah.
know,
Eric Ebron comes to mind
Eric
also.
Ebron. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I am personally insulted actually that Evan does not have Noah Fant in his top 150. I keep refreshing here to see where he is, and he is not even
No.
in there. Okay. Let's go to a running back here for Evan's final one before we get to the deep sleepers. Evan went with Ray Davis, who has an ADP of 164 overall draft pick of the Buffalo Bills. Evan, go ahead on Mr. Davis.
So Ray Davis was the Bills' 4th round pick out of Kentucky. I heard that the Bills' offensive coordinator Joe Brady was just pounding the table for Ray Davis as early on day two. He is built differently than James Cook. He's 5'8", 211 pounds. He was an interior tackle breaker in college, big time yards after contact numbers. He caught 94 passes in college. So he's not just like a 2-down pounder. Um, Ty Johnson is a little bit worrisome in terms of like he could open the season as the Bills' number 2 running back over Ray Davis. However, Ty Johnson got hurt in training camp, and we don't we he showed up to practice the next day with like a sleeve on his leg and not practicing. Maybe it's no big deal, but it's a situation to monitor because if all of a sudden Ty Johnson's out of the way, Ray Davis has the number 2 running back role behind James Cook on lock in an offense that was very good running the ball in the second half of the season last year under Joe Brady, and I think is going to continue to emphasize the running game because it kind of keeps the offense on schedule. You have a quarterback that is obviously an incredible talent, but also has some boom bust to his play. And so I think that establishing that running game is actually more important to the Bills than most teams. I think that they're going to stick with it. I think that Ray Davis, sooner rather than later, will be a factor in that backfield.
Yeah. The issues that I have with Ray Davis are somewhat similar to James Cook, where you lose so many rushing touchdowns to Josh Allen. And, that stings for sure when you want to get touchdowns. But yeah, I mean, at 164 overall, all these kind of rookie running backs that have a path, I'm certainly fine with. My last regular sleeper here is at the running back, and it's not a rookie. It's not a play that like I kind of typically make, but Khalil Herbert at 189 overall. Now, there was speculation from The Athletic that Khalil Herbert would be cut. I just don't see it. I don't think Evan does either. And yeah, it's not great that DeAndre Swift got this huge contract very early in free agency. It's not great that Roshan Johnson is still in the mix. But the idea that DeAndre Swift is going to win as a runner between the tackles, I kind of think Khalil Herbert's better there. I mean, the underlying metrics on Khalil Herbert have been pretty good. And so if Chicago's offense is good, and I think it will be, you can generate a bunch of scoring opportunities for Khalil Herbert and maybe get 10, 11, 12 base touches a game. I mean, to me, that's a steal at 189. And then you also get the contingent stuff, if something were to happen to DeAndre Swift. So I just think Khalil Herbert's a good player in what's going to be a pretty good offense. And so this late, close my eyes, take a shot, and see what happens here. It's not as exciting as some of the rookie backs that people take a shot on, like Bucky Irving or Ray Davis, like Evan's talking about. There's probably some more uncertainty and upside there. But just for a solid play, I think I prefer Herbert to those guys. Evan, any thoughts on Chicago backfield and Khalil Herbert?
Yeah, Khalil Herbert in his career, almost 5 yards per carry over 3 seasons. This is his contract year. I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I mean, he's just a productive, reliable rusher. He hasn't been great in the passing game, but I mean, I definitely think that there's a role for him on this team. DeAndre Swift is not a great interior runner, and has a history of getting nicked up, and also removing Justin Fields. Like you just talked about the effect of Josh Allen, vulturing, stealing rushing touchdowns. Like Caleb Williams isn't going to run like that in scoring position, and that role could actually go to Khalil Herbert. I mean, it's not crazy to think that. So I think that this is a pretty interesting one. I also think that the Bears as a unit, their offensive line is really built best to run block. So I think that works in the favor of Khalil Herbert.
All right. That's it for our solid-ish sleepers right now. We do want to get some deep sleepers off our chest. We know there's a lot of people out there in very deep leagues, 18-team leagues or super deep rosters, etc. Evan submitted 2 for deep sleepers that I thought about puking. And when you guys hear them, you are going to puke. Also, Evan submitted for deep sleepers, Sam Darnold and Tank Bigsby. Evan, the people are not going to like this. I guess you can start with Sam Darnold, and then we'll go to Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, I just tried to pick out the worst players that I possibly could and just, bet on their situations. And we talked about this, like J.J. McCarthy being dropped into the Kevin O'Connell offense. Sam Darnold is going to be the starter week 1. J.J. McCarthy, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but in training camp practices has not been looking great. A lot of bad throws. I think that that's okay. for him, like long term. But in the near term, I think that like they're going to play Sam Darnold. I think they're biased in week 7. I think that Sam Darnold gets at least the first 6 games, and if he plays well, which he could behind a good offensive line and a great scheme with Justin Jefferson, and I don't think that Jordan Addison is going to get suspended until later in the year, and eventually T.J. Hawkinson. I think that Sam Darnold, to an extent, is set up for success. The best receiver he's ever had in his career was Robbie Chosen.
Hmm.
Um, he's always had horrible offensive lines. He played pretty well for the 49ers last year, week 18. I mean, he has had moments in his NFL career. He's also only 26 years old. They gave him 10 million bucks this year. I think that they have some reason, and then if he goes somewhere and signs like, a decent contract in the offseason, like the Vikings could get a compensatory pick the next year. So I think that there is actually some like low key, the Vikings are incentivized to play him, um, and I think he's somewhat set up for success in that dome in the scheme with the receivers. So I think that he's a QB3 and he's a best ball only pick. But I also think that he's a QB3 like that you could put on your bench in a super flex league, and he could be valuable at some point in the year.
Yeah, we're gonna have a show coming soon where we'll talk about Superflex with JJ Zacharyson stuff. Also, my concern on Darnold is a few things. If he's not active, if he's not starting for the end of the year, then especially in best ball, like I can't have that. I can't have him not playing at the end of the year. Second, their opening schedule is not easy. At the Giants versus San Francisco versus Houston, at Green Bay versus the Jets, and that is their first 5 games. They have a bye in week 6. So, you could see some clamoring for JJ McCarthy if Sam Darnold doesn't play well. I think he'll play well in flashes. As we've seen, Evan, like he can really throw it. I mean, his arm talent is really strong. He just sometimes like, I don't know, he just like makes a mess of himself. Like, it's just inconsistency that leads coaches to kind of move away from
Yeah, I mean, I think
Sam
it's been
Darnold.
mental with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, maybe as he gets older, he also came in. He was a baby,
Yeah.
early. When he came out of USC, and potentially he's matured. I've always kind of seen him as like someone that once he kind of gets over, I don't want to call him immature or anything like that. We're all in our development phase when we're in our early 20s. I was doing real stupid shit, but like, but like then maybe later in his career, like a Rich Gannon sort of situation,
Yeah.
all of a sudden he pops up and has like a bunch of really nice seasons. I still think that that's within his range of potential outcomes.
All right. The other deep, deep sleeper Evan submitted is a guy who was maybe inarguably the worst running back in the entire NFL last season. So bad that he couldn't even get on the field for much of it. That was Tank Bigsby. Evan, go ahead on Mr. Bigsby this season. By the way, Tank Bigsby's ADP, I believe, is undrafted. Or no, Darnold's is undrafted, and Bigsby's is like real close to 200 or
Oh, one
something like
other
that.
thing on Darnold, I saw him. He was on a waiver wire in like a deep dynasty league that I'm
Yeah.
in, and I just put him on the bench and see what happens in that situation.
Oh, for sure.
Tank
Yeah.
Bigsby, um, yeah, he was horrible last year. The Jaguars actually had fairly big plans for him. I think he lost a fumble in week 1, dropped a pass, and like we didn't see him for a long time. Like immediately put in the coach's doghouse. And then the Jaguars really wound up running Travis Etienne into the ground. There was like a long mid to late season stretch where Travis Etienne like couldn't get anything going and was just out of gas. The Jaguars have incessantly been gassing up Tank Bigsby in his second training camp. Apparently showed up in great shape. They didn't really do a whole lot to supplement behind him. They added a 5th-round pick, Keelan Robinson, not until the 5th round. They do have Dearness Johnson, who I think is a capable NFL back. But Tank's Bigsby, it's not like his talent went away. I think that he just hit that doghouse, and they never trusted him again. They had O-line issues. The offense was really Trevor Lawrence was hurt. They couldn't figure out how to use Calvin Ridley. It was like a disaster all across the board for the Jaguars for much of last season, especially down the stretch. And they're giving him another shot, so we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. And he's free.
They have been outspoken trying to prop up Tank Bigsby this offseason, like going out of their way to be like, no, Tank's going to be fine. We like what we're seeing from Tank. A lot of that stuff is just empty coach speak, et cetera. He's going to have to prove it on the field, but that's one that we can watch in preseason, I think, pretty closely in the camp report and see how Tank
Yeah,
Bigsby is
I
doing.
would think that he gets a decent amount of work in the preseason to prove himself.
All right. For my deep sleepers, I'm going to give you some guys that actually could be good at football, unlike Evan. Let's start with Braylon Allen, 4th-round rookie, really young. I believe the youngest player in the draft. I know there's some muddled stuff there with Izzy Banaconda, Isaiah Davis. I think Braylon Allen is going to run away easily with the RB2 job behind Breece Hall. And every RB2, gets on the field for a little bit of standalone value. Breece Hall's not going to play every snap. And then if something were to happen to Breece Hall, who, by the way, had an ACL tear 2 years ago, I think Braylon Allen's role would be pretty strong there. Aaron Rodgers' offenses are extremely, extremely fantasy friendly to running backs. So Braylon Allen will be my first one. Second one is Jalen McMillan. Now, Trey Palmer projected pretty well for us a few times last year in DFS, was not a hit per se. I think Jalen McMillan could be a real upgrade on Trey Palmer and win that number 3 job behind Chris Godwin and Mike Evans right away for Baker Mayfield. So that was one. The other wide receiver 3 spot I'm watching is in Cincy, where everybody assumed it would be Jermaine Burton. But man, we've been talking about this guy for a while, Evan. Andre Yoshivas, been the star of Bengals camp. And I've started to mix in Andre Yoshivas, not just in my Burrow stacks, but also just as a standalone with the idea that he could just win the wide receiver 3 job outright over Jermaine Burton. Now, talent-wise, Burton's probably a better talent, but I do think they like Yoshivas. And obviously for Dynasty, we've been talking for a while. When T. Higgins is gone, Yoshivas is going to have a real chance. And the last one I had was Jalen Tolbert, who I know there's competition for the wide receiver 3 job, but I think Jalen Tolbert's going to win it. I don't know how good he is at football, but man, this Cowboys offense is going to be efficient, going to throw the ball a ton, going to have some huge 400-yard pass games. And if Jalen Tolbert's out there in 3 wide receiver sets, he's going to fall into a couple good games at least, I think. So those would be the 4 that I had for the deep ones for me. Braylon Allen, Jalen McMillan, Andre Yoshivas, Jalen Tolbert. Evan, any thoughts on any of those guys you want to get off?
Yoshivas stands out, obviously, because he's been killing it in camp. They've made it a point to give him reps in the slot. That, of course, is the open position in Cincinnati with
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd gone.
Yeah.
I have sort of suspected that they might end up using Jamar Chase more in the slot. But if Yoshivas grabs that, man, he'd be a big athletic slot receiver. That could be fun. But if Yoshivas grabs that, then they're going to run with that, and they're going to play a lot of 3 receiver sets, I think, as well there. Yeah, and he does have a lot of competition though. This is going to be an ongoing training camp battle that probably extends into the season, because Jermaine Burton is really talented. But he's also not like your typical slot receiver. He's more of an outside player who I kind of thought might be a replacement for T. Higgins. And then Trenton Irwin is a guy that if Yoshivas starts to make mistakes, or Burton isn't ready, or isn't really a slot player, they could just put in Trenton Irwin, and he's a guy that they could trust because he's given them somewhat quality snaps in the past. But yeah, I think that those are all pretty intriguing late sleeper picks. Not as good as mine, Darnold and Tank Bigsby, but they were all right.
To Evan's point, it hadn't really crossed my mind that much, but man, Jamar Chase in the slot would be fun. Last season, Jamar Chase, 216 slot snaps, 668 out wide. If that gets closer to even, I think that can only be a good thing for Jamar Chase. All right. That's going to do it for this July 31st look at sleepers. Both of our opinions on who we should be targeting late in drafts will certainly change over the next few weeks. Be sure to stay tuned to the site if you do have the draft kit, as we'll have our sleeper lists up within a couple weeks here. We will be back very soon for shows with JJ Zacharyson, with Matt Harmon. We're also going to have a show coming up where we go over Evan's latest top 150 adjustments. He has some hot takes in there. He has some controversial takes in there. Be sure you check it out, and we will talk about that soon. For Evan, for producer Ryan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.